The numbers on the digital clock seemed to taunt her. For 23 a.m. Bonney stared at them from her position on the apartment floor, surrounded by the physical evidence of her stupidity. Packed boxes, printed boarding passes for a flight 6 hours gone, and a phone that had died waiting for a call that never came. The rain outside hammered against the windows like it was trying to break in, or maybe trying to warn her of something she'd figured out too late. Stefan Dan had promised her on Wednesday night, and Stefan Dan's promises moved markets. His word was iron. His commitments were sacred. So why was she sitting here alone in an empty apartment, wrapped in a future that had evaporated? Her laptop screen glowed in the darkness, a news notification appearing like a knife in the dark. She clicked it with trembling fingers. The video loaded, and there was her answer, dressed in Tom Ford and standing at an altar with Victoria Ashford's hand on his arm, both of them smiling at cameras that should have been capturing their Barcelona arrival instead. Tech Titans unite, Dan Ashford merger sealed with surprise wedding. Bonney's world didn't just end. It rewrote itself, making her the fool in someone else's strategic plan. If you believe people deserve honesty, not calculated betrayals, hit subscribe. Only manipulators and cowards won't. Comment, honesty over lies, if you stand against people who treat love like a business deal. What would you have done if this happened to you? Tell us in the comments. 8 months earlier, Bonney's life had been beautifully simple in all the ways that mattered. She was a 25-year-old junior architect at Morrison & Clark, one of the city's most respected sustainable design firms. Her days were spent sketching eco-friendly housing concepts, her nights filled with the quiet satisfaction of creating spaces that might actually improve people's lives. Her studio apartment overlooked the financial district, its walls covered with architectural renderings and gaudy prints, its shelves overflowing with design books and half-finished models. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, earned through student loans and 60-hour work weeks and a stubborn belief that good design could change the world. Then Stefan Dan walked into the Morrison & Clark presentation room and changed everything. The firm had been competing for the contract to design his company's new sustainable headquarters, a $200 million project that would define the city's skyline. Bonney had been assigned to present the eco-friendly design concept. Glass facades with integrated solar panels, rooftop gardens, rainwater collection systems, spaces designed for human flourishing rather than corporate efficiency. She'd poured 6 weeks into those plans. Stefan sat at the head of the conference table, his presence commanding despite his casual posture. At 35, he looked like what he was, a man who'd built a tech empire from a dorm room idea and never apologized for his success. While her senior partners pitched the business aspects, his attention kept returning to her designs. Why the emphasis on community spaces? He'd asked, his blue eyes sharp and genuinely curious. Most corporate headquarters maximize individual productivity. Bonney had met his gaze directly. Because people aren't machines. They create better work when they have places to connect, to think, to remember they're human. You're not just building a headquarters. You're building a home for 2,000 people who'll spend a third of their lives there. Something shifted in his expression. After the presentation, while her bosses were packing up, he approached her alone. Your design philosophy is remarkable, he said, his voice quieter now, almost reverent. Most architects build monuments to their clients' egos. You build homes for communities. She should have kept it professional, should have thanked him and walked away. But something in the way he looked at her drawings, like they mattered beyond their profit potential, made her heart do something dangerous. He came back the following Tuesday, not for a meeting but carrying 2 coffees and a genuine interest in her latest project. That turned into lunch. Lunch became dinner. Dinner became late-night phone calls where he confessed the loneliness of always being Stefan Dan, tech billionaire, never just Stefan. Their relationship unfolded in stolen moments and secret places. Restaurants where he wouldn't be recognized, his penthouse after his staff went home, the apartment he rented under a shell company just so they could have somewhere that was theirs. With you, I'm not the CEO everyone wants something from, he'd whispered one night, his forehead pressed against hers in the darkness of that secret apartment. "You see who I really am. Just Stefan." The courtship was intoxicating. He'd fly her to Barcelona for a single dinner because she'd mentioned wanting to see Gaudi's work in person. He'd send architectural books to her office with handwritten notes about passages that made him think of her. He'd show up at her apartment at midnight with takeout and questions about her dreams, actually listening like her answers mattered more than any board meeting. 6 months in, their conversations shifted from present to future. What would they build together if they could start fresh? Where would they go if the empire didn't matter? Barcelona kept coming up, Bonney's dream city, with its innovative urban design and sustainable housing movements. Stefan confessed he'd always wanted to step back from the company, maybe even teach, share what he'd learned without the pressure of quarterly earnings. Then, 2 weeks ago, everything crystallized. They were in the secret apartment, watching the city lights, when Stefan turned to her with an expression she'd never seen before. Not the confident CEO, but something raw and uncertain and achingly hopeful. "I'm tired of this, Bonney," he'd said. "The board meetings that never end. The shareholders who only see numbers. The constant performing. I want to design my life with you in Barcelona. We'll start fresh. I'll consult, teach, maybe angel invest in startups that actually matter. You can work with those sustainable housing cooperatives you're always talking about. We'll build something real together. Stefan, you can't just walk away from. Watch me." His hands cupped her face. "I've spent 10 years building an empire that doesn't need me anymore. I have more money than we could spend in 3 lifetimes. What I don't have is time. And I refuse to waste another day of it in boardrooms when I could be in Barcelona with you." The decision should have been impossible. Callahan Associates had just offered her a senior architect position. The opportunity she'd been working toward since graduation, with a salary that would finally let her pay off her student loans. But Stefan was offering something she hadn't known she wanted until he said it out loud. Freedom to build the life she actually wanted, not the one she was supposed to want. She'd turned down Callahan on Monday. They'd booked the Wednesday midnight flight on Tuesday. She'd spent Wednesday packing her entire life into boxes, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Everything she owned fit into 10 boxes and 2 suitcases, a fact that felt liberating rather than sad. By 10 p.m. Wednesday, she was in the apartment, watching the clock, imagining their arrival in Barcelona. By midnight, she was refreshing her phone, confused but not yet worried. By 2 a.m., her phone had died and panic had set in. By 4:23 a.m., she was watching the man she loved marry someone else on the morning news. The video played again, and again, and again. Bonney couldn't stop watching, couldn't tear her eyes away from the screen as news channels picked up the story like hungry vultures circling fresh carnage. Each network showed the same footage from slightly different angles. Stefan and Victoria emerging from the Ashford family chapel, confetti raining down like mockery, their hands intertwined with the ease of people who'd done this before. The details she noticed made everything worse. The venue wasn't some hastily arranged location. It was the Ashford estate, their private chapel with its hand-carved pews and stained glass windows that had taken months, maybe years, to book for events. Victoria's Vera Wong gown wasn't off-the-rack desperation. The intricate beadwork and custom fit screamed months of fittings and alterations. Stefan's midnight blue Tom Ford suit, the one she'd helped him choose for Barcelona, now revealed itself as wedding attire all along. Nothing about this was spontaneous. Nothing about this was sudden pressure forcing his hand. The business channels were worse. Analysts sat in their sterile studios, praising the strategic brilliance of the merger marriage, discussing synergies and market positioning like Stefan's wedding was a quarterly earnings report. The Dan Ashford alliance effectively corners the entire West Coast tech sector, one analyst said, practically salivating. This isn't just a marriage, it's a monopoly wrapped in romance. Bonney's hands trembled as she reached for her phone, then stopped. Who could she even call? Who would understand that her entire future had just been revealed as an elaborate lie? The apartment door burst open. Chloe stood there, still in her pajamas, hair wild, eyes blazing with a fury that Bonney couldn't quite access yet. Her best friend since college crossed the room in 3 strides, took one look at Bonney's face, and pulled her into a fierce hug. "I saw the news," Chloe said, her voice shaking. "I got in my car the second I saw it. Bonney, I'm so sorry." "He married her," Bonney heard herself say, her voice flat and distant, like it belonged to someone else. "He married her while I was waiting for him." Chloe pulled back, gripping Bonney's shoulders. "He let you quit your job. He let you turn down Callahan Associates. He let you pack up your entire life into boxes for a future he knew wasn't coming. Bonney, he let you sit here all night." "I know." The words came out sharper than intended. "Do you? Because you look like you're in shock, and I need you to get angry. You have every right to be furious right now." But Bonney wasn't angry yet. The anger would come later. Right now, she was just numb, that hollow, echoing numbness that felt like her insides had been scooped out and replaced with static. Her laptop chimed. New email notification. Chloe grabbed it before Bonney could. "It's from." Her face went from concerned to murderous. "It's from Stefan's attorney." Not even from him. His attorney. Bonney took the laptop with hands that didn't feel like hers. The subject line read, "Settlement Agreement, Confidential." She clicked it open. The words swam before her eyes, clinical and corporate, each sentence a surgical strike designed to reduce a year of her life to contractual terms. "Dear Ms. Martinez, on behalf of Stefan Dan, I am writing to address the recent change in circumstances regarding your personal relationship with my client. Mr. Dan has asked me to convey his sincere apologies for any inconvenience or emotional distress this situation may have caused. In recognition of the career disruption you have experienced, and as a gesture of goodwill, Mr. Dan has authorized a wire transfer of $2 million to your account, confirmation attached. This settlement is offered without admission of liability and is intended to provide you with financial security as you transition to your next chapter. Please review the attached non-disclosure agreement, which outlines the terms of confidentiality regarding your relationship with Mr. Dan. Your signature and prompt return of this document would be appreciated. We trust this arrangement will be satisfactory and wish you well in your future endeavors." Bonney read it once, twice, 3 times. Each reading made it worse. "Career disruption," she said aloud, her voice cracking. "Emotional distress. Gesture of goodwill. Bonney, he's settling me. Like I'm a lawsuit. Like our entire relationship was a business liability that requires appropriate financial consideration." The numbness was starting to crack now, something darker seeping through the fissures. Chloe's jaw clenched. "There's an NDA. He's paying you $2 million to shut up about him." The money was already there. She opened her banking app with shaking hands and saw the transfer confirmation. $2 million, deposited at 3:47 a.m. Probably time to hit her account right before the wedding news broke. Every detail calculated. Every move strategic. "I wasn't his partner," Bonney whispered. "I was a problem requiring settlement." That's when the rage finally broke through. Hit that like button if you believe people aren't problems to be settled. Only toxic users disagree. Comment people aren't contracts if you stand against treating relationships like business transactions. Let me know in the comments. Would you have signed that NDA or confronted him? Sleep was impossible. By 6 a.m., Bonney was on her laptop, Chloe beside her with coffee neither of them was drinking, digging through business news archives with the systematic determination of someone looking for confirmation of a truth they already knew. Dan Ashford merger talks confirmed. Chloe read from an article dated 6 months ago. Sources close to both families suggest negotiations have been ongoing since early spring. 6 months. Bonney's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up article after article. Every intimate moment with Stefan, every whispered promise about Barcelona, every plan they'd made. All of it had happened while he was simultaneously negotiating terms that included marrying Victoria Ashford. She found photos from tech galas. Stefan and Victoria together at a charity event 4 months ago, looking comfortable, familiar, like people who'd known each other their whole lives. Because they had, the caption mentioned longtime family friends and natural business alliance. Another photo from a shareholder meeting 3 months ago, Stefan's hand on Victoria's back, guiding her through a crowd. The body language wasn't awkward or forced. It was practiced. Easy. "Look at this," Bonney said, her voice hollow. She pulled up an interview Stefan had given 2 months ago, right around the time he'd flown her to Barcelona for that romantic dinner. The journalist had asked about succession planning, and Stefan had smiled that careful smile she knew so well. "I'm focused on building lasting partnerships that will take this company into the next generation. Sometimes the best alliances are built on relationships that go back decades." He'd been talking about Victoria, about their marriage, while Bonney was falling in love with him. Chloe scrolled through Bonney's phone, pulling up text messages, trying to find the pattern they'd both missed. Remember when he canceled that weekend in Napa? Said he had an emergency board meeting. That was the weekend of the Ashford Foundation Gala. Bonney pulled up society photos. There was Stefan, in a tuxedo, with Victoria on his arm, smiling for cameras at an event he'd told Bonney he couldn't attend because of work. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Every time he'd been too busy for weekends away. Every time he'd insisted their relationship stay secret for her protection from media scrutiny. Every time he'd changed the subject when she'd asked about going public. "He was keeping you compartmentalized," Chloe said, her voice tight with anger on Bonney's behalf. "His real life with Victoria and the board, and his escape fantasy with you. You were never part of his actual world, Bonney. You were the secret he kept to make himself feel human while he did the most calculating thing imaginable." The words hit like physical blows, but they were true. Bonney had thought she was special, the one person who saw the real Stefan beneath the CEO mask. But maybe there was no real Stefan. Maybe the mask was all there ever was. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Stefan's attorney, checking if she'd reviewed the NDA. Something crystallized in that moment. The numbness and the rage and the grief all synthesized into a single, diamond-hard certainty. She refused to be erased. She refused to accept his narrative, to take his money, and disappear quietly like a problem solved. "The wedding reception is tonight," Bonney said, her voice steady for the first time since 4:23 a.m. at the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown. Chloe looked at her, understanding dawning. "Bonney, you can't." "I can. I deserve to look him in the eye and hear the truth from his mouth, not his attorney's email. I deserve to make him acknowledge what he did. Security will be insane. You'll never get in. I designed the Grand Meridian's renovation 3 years ago." Bonney pulled up the architectural plans she still had saved on her hard drive. "I know every service entrance, every private corridor, every place Stefan would retreat to when events got overwhelming. He has a pattern. He always finds an office or private room to decompress. I'll find him." Chloe studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Okay, then we're doing this right. You're not going in there looking broken. You're going in there looking like the woman who's about to make him regret every choice he's ever made." By evening, Bonney stood in front of Chloe's full-length mirror, transformed. The elegant black dress Chloe had lent her fit perfectly. Simple, sophisticated, the kind of outfit that commanded respect rather than attention. Her hair was styled in a sleek, low bun, her makeup subtle but flawless, covering the evidence of tears and sleepless nights. She looked powerful, composed. Nothing like the woman who'd spent the night on a floor surrounded by boxes. "Here." Chloe handed her a designer clutch. "Borrowed from my sister. Confidence is half armor, half performance. You've got the armor. Now perform." Bonney studied her reflection. She didn't want revenge. That would make her just like him, playing games and using people. She wanted something simpler and infinitely more important. The dignity of truth. The respect of a real explanation, not corporate PR through a lawyer. "I'm ready," she said. Outside, the city lights glittered like broken promises. The Grand Meridian Hotel blazed on the horizon, hosting a celebration that should never have existed. And somewhere in that building, Stefan Dan was beginning his wedding reception with a woman who wasn't Bonney, living a life built on the foundation of her shattered dreams. But tonight, he would have to face what he'd done. Tonight, he would have to look at her and explain why their future was worth less than a business alliance. Tonight, she would get her answers. The Grand Meridian Hotel blazed against the evening sky like a palace carved from light. Luxury cars lined the circular drive, Bentleys, Maseratis, Teslas with custom modifications that cost more than most people's houses. Women in designer gowns glittered with jewelry that could fund small countries. Men in tailored tuxedos discussed mergers and acquisitions like other people discussed the weather. Bonney stood across the street, her black dress suddenly feeling inadequate despite Chloe's assurances. This was Stefan's world, the world he'd chosen over her. The world she'd thought he wanted to escape. "You can still turn back," Chloe said from the driver's seat, though her tone suggested she knew Bonney wouldn't. "No, I can't." Bonney opened the car door. "I'll text you when I'm out." The main entrance was impossible, security checkpoints, guest lists, metal detectors. But Bonney had spent 3 months renovating this building and knew its bones better than the current security team ever would. She circled to the east side, where deliveries came through, where the marble hallways gave way to service corridors designed to keep the machinery of luxury invisible. The service entrance was propped open, a catering van still unloading champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Bonney slipped through, walking with the borrowed confidence of someone who belonged. Walk like you have every right to be here, and most people won't question it. She'd learned that from Stefan, ironically, how the wealthy moved through the world assuming their presence needed no justification. The service corridors were a maze of concrete and fluorescent lights, but she knew them by heart. She navigated past kitchen staff too busy to notice her, past event coordinators checking clipboards, past security guards focused on the main reception areas rather than the back passages. Through a doorway, she caught her first glimpse of the reception. The grand ballroom had been transformed into something from a fairy tale or a corporate fantasy, depending on your perspective. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. Ice sculptures shaped like the Dan and Ashford Company logos gleamed on champagne tables. And there, in the center of it all, Stefan and Victoria circulated among guests like royalty, greeting subjects. Victoria's hand rested on Stefan's arm with practiced ease. They moved in perfect synchronization, smiling at the right moments, laughing at the appropriate times. They looked like what they were, 2 people who'd been trained since birth for exactly this role. The perfect power couple, their union-sealing empires. Bonney's heart clenched, but she pushed forward. She hadn't come this far to stand in doorways watching. She spotted Marcus, Stefan's executive assistant, emerging from a private elevator, checking his phone with the harried expression of someone managing an impossible schedule. Bonney ducked into an alcove as he passed, then watched where he'd come from. The executive floor. Stefan's private office, which he insisted on having in every major venue, was a quiet space to escape the overwhelming demands of constant socialization. Old habits never die. Even on his wedding day, Stefan would need his escape. Bonney took the service elevator up, her heart hammering against her ribs. The doors opened to reveal a hallway of quiet luxury, thick carpet, subdued lighting, the kind of space designed for deals made away from public scrutiny. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling out. She walked toward it, each step feeling both inevitable and impossible. This was it. No more attorneys or settlements or corporate statements. Just truth, finally, even if it destroyed her all over again. Stefan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, his silhouette sharp against the glittering skyline. He'd removed his jacket, draped it over a leather chair. His tie hung loosely around his neck, the first crack in the perfect facade he'd maintained all evening. "Marcus, I just need 5 more minutes," he said without turning, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I'm not Marcus." Stefan spun around, and for one unguarded moment, his composure was shattered completely. "Bonney." Her name came out strangled, disbelieving. You shouldn't be here. She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her with a soft click that felt final. Neither should you. You're supposed to be in Barcelona with me. His eyes darted to the door, calculating. If security found her, if Victoria discovered her, the scandal would be immediate and devastating. How did you? I designed this building's renovation, remember? I know every service entrance, every private corridor. Her voice was ice cold, each word precisely controlled. I know where you go when events get overwhelming. I know you, Stefan. Or I thought I did. He moved toward her, then stopped, seeming to realize he'd lost the right to close that distance. You need to leave before someone sees you. If Victoria's family. I don't care about Victoria's family. I don't care about your investors or your security or your carefully managed image. She was shaking now, but not with fear. With fury that had been building since 4:23 a.m. I don't want your money. I don't want your apologies. I want the truth. Look at me and tell me why. The email explained. The email. Her laugh was sharp enough to cut. Your attorney's corporate settlement offer? That explained nothing, Stefan. Career disruption and emotional distress? Is that what you call making me believe in a future while you planned your wedding to someone else? The settlement is generous. I'm not a business problem requiring settlement. Her voice cracked, the ice giving way to something raw. Was any of it real? Barcelona? Starting over? Or was I just your escape fantasy while you did what you'd always planned to do? The question hung between them like a blade. Stefan's carefully constructed control crumbled, his face showing something she'd rarely seen, genuine anguish. Everything I told you was true, he said, his voice breaking. I did want to leave with you. I did love you. I still. Then why? She gestured toward the window, toward the reception below, where his wife was probably wondering where he'd gone. Why am I standing here while you're married to someone else? Why did I spend all night waiting with boarding passes to Barcelona while you exchanged vows with Victoria Ashford? Stefan ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so familiar it hurt. 6 weeks ago, the board discovered our relationship. They hired a private investigator. I don't know how long they'd been watching, but they had photos, recordings, detailed reports of every moment we'd spent together. Bonney's stomach dropped. Their intimate dinners, their secret apartment, their plans for Barcelona. All of it documented, violated, turned into leverage. My largest investors, led by the Ashford family, had been planning a hostile takeover for months. They presented me with an ultimatum: merge with Ashford Industries through marriage to Victoria, or face acquisition. Not just a takeover, Bonney. A complete restructuring. Mass layoffs, asset liquidation, everything I'd built systematically destroyed. So you chose the company over me, she said flatly. I chose 3,000 employees over my happiness. His voice rose, desperate. Do you understand what a hostile takeover would have meant? Over 3,000 people would have lost their jobs. Engineers who'd been with me since the beginning. Single mothers supporting families. Recent graduates with student loans. They weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They were people whose livelihoods depended on decisions I made. Bonney stared at him, trying to process it. You're telling me this was about protecting jobs? I spent 3 sleepless nights with lawyers trying to find another way. I looked into fighting them, letting them take the company, walking away from all of it. Stefan's eyes glistened. But the numbers were clear. Refuse the marriage, lose the company, destroy thousands of lives. Or break one heart and save thousands of families. So you chose for me, Bonney said, her voice hollow. You decided my heartbreak was acceptable collateral damage. I thought if I made a clean break, sent you away with enough money to start over, you'd hate me, but you'd be free. You'd build the incredible life you deserve. You treated me like a child. The words exploded out of her, like someone too weak to handle difficult truths. You didn't just choose them over me, Stefan. You decided I wasn't strong enough to make that choice with you. He stepped back as if she'd struck him. You treated me like a liability instead of a partner. Like I needed protection from reality rather than the truth. Her voice shook with fury and devastation mixed together. Maybe I would have understood. Maybe I would have helped you find another way. Maybe I would have stood beside you while you fought. But you didn't give me that chance. I was trying to protect you. From what? From being an adult who could make informed decisions about her own life. She moved closer, forcing him to see her. You said I saw the real you. But you never saw the real me. Someone strong enough to stand beside you through hard choices. Someone who deserved to be your partner, not your secret. Stefan's face crumbled. Bonney, I'm sorry. I thought. Love without trust isn't love, Stefan. It's just beautiful lies wrapped in good intentions. She turned toward the door, done with explanations that explained nothing. Subscribe if you believe partners deserve to make choices together. Controllers and manipulators won't. Comment trust or nothing if you refuse to let someone protect you by lying. Would you have walked out like Bonney or given him another chance? Drop your thoughts below. Bonney, please. He reached for her hand. She pulled away. I hope those 3,000 employees know what their jobs cost you. I hope when you're lying next to Victoria in 10 years, still playing the role you chose, you remember that someone once loved you enough to leave everything behind. And you let her go because you couldn't trust her with the truth. The words landed like physical blows. Stefan stood frozen, his hands still outstretched, finally understanding what his protection had cost them both. Goodbye, Stefan. Bonney walked out, her heels clicking against marble floors with a finality that matched her heartbeat. Behind her, she left the man she'd loved sitting with his choice, the empire he'd saved and the future he'd sacrificed. She didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. The service elevator doors closed, carrying her down and away from the world she'd never really belonged to. Her phone buzzed, Chloe asking if she was okay. She wasn't okay. But she would be. Because unlike Stefan, she was strong enough to face hard truths and keep moving forward. Chloe's car pulled up to the hotel's east entrance just as Bonney emerged from the service corridor. She climbed in without a word, her composure holding by the thinnest thread. They drove in silence through the city streets, away from the blazing lights and champagne towers, until Chloe turned into Riverside Park and parked overlooking the water. The city's skyline glittered across the bay, each light a reminder of the world Bonney had just walked away from. She stared at the reflection rippling on the dark water, Stefan's words echoing in her head. I couldn't sacrifice thousands of families for my happiness. The explanation made sense intellectually. She could understand the impossible math, the moral calculus that led him to that choice. But understanding why didn't make the betrayal hurt less. He chose them, Bonney said finally, her voice hollow. 3,000 employees over us. He chose to make that decision without you, Chloe corrected gently. That's what makes it unforgivable. The distinction mattered. Stefan hadn't just picked the company over their relationship. He'd decided she wasn't strong enough to be part of that choice. He'd reduced her to someone who needed protection rather than partnership, someone to be managed rather than trusted. But sitting there in the darkness, watching the water move and shift, something crystallized in Bonney's mind. Stefan had made his choice. She refused to be broken by it. She refused to let his decision define the rest of her life. He made his choice, Chloe said, as if reading her thoughts. Now you get to make yours. Bonney turned to look at her best friend, the only person who'd shown up without question, who'd driven across the city in pajamas, who'd stood beside her through the worst night of her life. I'm not letting his money sit in my account like guilt payment, she said, the words coming clearer now, more certain. If Stefan sacrificed our love for his responsibilities, I'll transform his guilt into something meaningful. Chloe smiled, fierce and proud. What are you thinking? Barcelona, Bonney said. Not to escape, to build. 2 weeks later, Bonney stood in Barcelona's El Raval neighborhood, surrounded by narrow streets and aging buildings that held stories in every weathered brick. She'd always dreamed of this city, Gaudi's vision made real, sustainable urban design transforming how people lived, the perfect marriage of beauty and function. But this trip wasn't the romantic escape Stefan had promised. It was something better, a mission. She'd spent those 2 weeks researching, reaching out to contacts from architecture school who'd moved to Spain, and connecting with local housing advocates and community organizers. Barcelona was experiencing an affordability crisis. Young professionals and families priced out of the city they called home, beautiful historic buildings falling into disrepair because renovation costs made them financially unviable. Standing in front of a particularly stunning Art Nouveau building with boarded windows and a crumbling facade, Bonney felt something click into place. This was what Stefan's $2 million could become. Not blood money or guilt payment, but seed capital for real change. "The owner wants to sell," said Maite Soler, a local housing advocate who'd agreed to meet with her. "But developers only want to turn it into luxury apartments. The neighborhood would lose another piece of its identity, and 10 more families would have to move further out." Bonney studied the building's bones, the ornate ironwork balconies, the high ceilings visible through broken windows, the tile work that had survived a century. "What if we could prove beautiful architecture doesn't require luxury prices?" she said. "Sustainable design, affordable housing, but done with care and respect for the building's history." Maite's eyes widened. "You're talking about cooperative housing? Like La Lealtat Sansenka?" "Similar, but more integrated. Not just affordable, aspirational. Proving that people deserve beauty regardless of income." Bonney pulled out her tablet, already sketching concepts. Solar panels integrated into the roof design, rainwater collection systems, passive heating and cooling, and community spaces that fostered connection. Every detail is designed with the same care architects give to luxury developments. Over the next 3 months, Bonney assembled her team. Local architects are excited by the challenge of sustainable renovation. Community organizers knew which families needed homes. Engineers specializing in historic preservation. 10 families are willing to invest their lives in a cooperative housing model. The work became her healing. Every blueprint she drew rewrote her story. She wasn't the woman who'd waited anymore. She was the woman who built. Each design decision was a declaration. Her worth wasn't defined by Stefan's choice. Her value wasn't measured by his love or lack thereof. The Barcelona architecture community embraced her vision with an enthusiasm that startled her. She presented at the Construmat Sustainable Building Congress, where experts discussed the future of social housing and biodynamic architecture. She gave workshops on integrating sustainability with affordability. She made real friends, architects who valued collaboration over competition, families who invited her to dinner, a community that saw her for who she was becoming rather than who she'd been. Late at night, working on designs in her small Barcelona apartment overlooking the Gothic Quarter, Bonney realized she'd discovered strength she hadn't known she possessed. Not the strength to endure heartbreak, but the strength to transform it into purpose. For months after walking out of Stefan's office, Bonney stood before a crowd of 200 people in the autumn sunshine. Behind her, the first completed building gleamed, contemporary design honoring the original Art Nouveau architecture, solar panels discreetly integrated into the roofline, community gardens on the ground floor, 10 family units designed with meticulous care. The building proved what she'd set out to demonstrate. Beauty and affordability weren't mutually exclusive. Everyone deserves a home that reflects their worth, not just their wallet, Bonney said into the microphone, her voice steady and sure. This building isn't charity. It's a declaration that good design, sustainable living, and community connection should be accessible to everyone. The crowd erupted in applause. Local government officials nodded approvingly. Architecture journalists scribbled notes. But the faces that mattered most were the 10 families who'd be moving in next week. A single mother and her 2 children, a young couple expecting their first baby, a retired teacher who'd lived in El Raval her entire life, families who deserved dignity and beauty in their daily lives. As Bonney cut the ribbon, she felt something profound settle in her chest, a completeness that had nothing to do with Stefan or romance or being chosen by someone else. This was different. This was choosing herself. She'd been so focused on being selected by Stefan, on being worthy of his love and his escape plan, that she'd forgotten the most important truth. She'd always been complete on her own. She didn't need saving. She needed purpose and community and the freedom to build something meaningful. That evening, as the celebration wound down and families began measuring their new spaces with excited planning, Bonney's phone buzzed. Unknown number. 3 messages in succession. Saw the news about your Barcelona project. It's extraordinary. You're extraordinary. I hope you found the peace I couldn't give you. The board pushed me out last week. A hostile takeover happened anyway. I saved those jobs for 4 months, but not forever. You were right. I should have trusted you with the truth. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know you deserved better than what I gave you. You always did. Bonney read the messages twice, feeling a twinge of sympathy for the man who'd sacrificed everything and lost anyway. Stefan's ultimate fear had come true. The hostile takeover he'd married Victoria to prevent had happened regardless. His bargain had bought 4 months. For months that cost him everything. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before realizing the truth. His redemption wasn't her responsibility anymore. His journey toward understanding what he'd lost was his to walk alone. She had her own path now, one that led forward rather than back. She closed the messages without responding. Evening settled over Barcelona in shades of amber and rose. Bonney walked through El Raval, past the building she'd transformed, seeing lights flickering on in windows as families moved furniture and made plans. Children's laughter echoed from the community courtyard. The smell of someone cooking dinner drifted from an open window, ordinary moments made extraordinary by their simple humanity. She stopped at Café Merce, her favorite spot with its worn wooden tables and view of the narrow street. She ordered café con leche and claimed her usual seat by the window, watching life unfold in all its messy, beautiful complexity. Her phone buzzed again, this time Chloe, sending photos of her goddaughter Emma building with blocks. The caption read, "She wants to be an architect like Aunt Bonney when she grows up." Bonney smiled, genuinely happy, her heart full in ways it had never been with Stefan. This life she'd built from heartbreak, the meaningful work, the authentic community, the sense of purpose that came from creating beauty for people who deserved it, was better than the escape Stefan had promised. She didn't need him to save her from reality. She'd needed reality to save her from limiting herself to his vision of who she could be. The most important truth had revealed itself slowly, through blueprints and building permits and late nights with her team. Her story wasn't about the man who broke her heart. It was about the woman who took the broken pieces and built something beautiful from them. If you believe your worth isn't defined by who chooses you, smash that subscribe button. Only insecure manipulators disagree. Hit like if you stand with people who rebuild after betrayal. Comment, "I choose myself," if you refuse to let heartbreak be your ending. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're enough on their own. Bonney opened her sketchbook, the pages already filling with plans for the second building. A larger project in the Poblenou neighborhood, 15 units this time, incorporating even more innovative, sustainable technologies. The work was just beginning. The vision was expanding. And for the first time since 4:23 a.m., that terrible morning, the future felt like a possibility rather than a loss. She closed the sketchbook, finished her coffee, and walked out into the Barcelona twilight. The Gothic quarter spread before her like a labyrinth of history and innovation intertwined. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of possibilities. And for the first time in her life, that was exactly enough.
Thank you for watching the story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So, do check it out.